The wailing of women filled the dusty compound of Nobi village. A heavy silence had just swallowed the air moments before, broken only by the echo of a widow's cry. Nina's voice rose above the rest, her tears running like a river that had lost its banks. Her husband, Obinna, was gone. Death had come too soon, uninvited, cruel, and shameless. Obinna was still in his youthful strength, a man who carried the name of his family with pride. Now, his lifeless body lay stretched on a raffia mat, covered with a white cloth, while the old women of the clan performed the rituals of death. Chai, O Diegwu, life has no shame, one woman muttered as she wailed. To take a man and leave his young wife pregnant like this. Nina, her hair undone and scattered, sat on the bare ground in front of the corpse. She held her swollen belly as though it were her last anchor to life. The child within her stirred, as if responding to the chaos outside. Her mind was empty, and yet overflowing. Empty because she could not imagine her future without her husband. Overflowing because memories of him, his laughter, his promises, his dreams for their unborn child, now haunted her like shadows. For 3 days, the compound of Obinna's family was alive with the rituals of mourning. Men dug the red earth to prepare his grave, their bodies glistening with sweat as they lifted shovelfuls of soil. Women wailed, beat their chests, and rolled on the ground. The village elders sat under the shade of an old Udala tree, sipping palm wine, nodding their heads slowly as they discussed the cruelty of fate. When Obinna's body was finally lowered into the earth, Nina's world collapsed fully. She fainted at the graveside, her cries echoing even in her unconscious state. In the weeks that followed, Nina moved like a shadow. Every morning, she would sit at the entrance of her hut, staring into the distance, her hands resting on her swollen stomach. Her eyes were hollow, yet within them, a spark of determination lingered. "I will live for you, my child," she would whisper, her voice trembling but firm. "Even if the world turns its back on me, I will not turn my back on you." The people of Nobi pitied her. Some offered food, others came with kind words, but most whispered behind her back. "She is young and beautiful," they would say. "Another man will take her one day." "She is unlucky," others muttered. "Who knows if the child she carries will survive without a father's blessing?" Nina heard it all, but she paid no mind. Her heart clung to the only hope she had left, the child that was growing within her. Months rolled by, and the day of delivery arrived with the sound of heavy rain. The clouds had gathered angrily, and lightning tore the night sky open. Thunder roared like the voice of an angry deity, and the rain poured down in torrents, beating the thatched roofs of the village. Nina was rushed to the small hospital in the neighboring town of Arakwu. Her cries echoed through the narrow ward as midwives ran about, preparing the delivery bed. "Breathe, madam, breathe," one nurse urged. Her body shook, her hands gripping the sheets, her soul dancing between life and death. Hours stretched like days. Sweat covered her face, and her lips whispered her late husband's name. Then, finally, a cry pierced the air. A baby girl had entered the world. But before Nina could breathe in relief, another wave of pain tore through her body. The midwives were shocked. "Another one is coming," they shouted. Moments later, a second cry joined the first. 2 baby girls, identical like mirrors, lay wriggling on the hospital bed. Nina, exhausted and half-conscious, smiled weakly. "Obinna, you gave me double. Your seed lives on." But fate had other plans. As Nina slipped into a deep sleep, 2 nurses exchanged glances. The hospital was known for its dark dealings, especially with desperate wealthy families who longed for children. "This one will not know," whispered one nurse. "She is weak, and her eyes did not even open to see them both." The other nodded. "One will be enough for her. We will sell the other to the couple that came last week." And so, under the cover of night, one of the twins was taken away. Papers were forged, records adjusted, and when morning came, Nina was presented with only one baby girl. "She is beautiful," the nurse said, smiling. "You have given birth to one strong daughter. Congratulations." Nina, too weak to question, held the child close to her chest and wept tears of both sorrow and joy. She named her daughter Kayamika, meaning God is beautiful. To her, this was the only child she had. She never knew that a part of her heart had been stolen. From that day forward, Nina poured all her love, all her strength, and all her life into raising Kayamika. She did not joke with her child. They ate together, slept together, laughed together, and even when Kayamika began to grow, Nina insisted that they remained inseparable. If you will eat, we must eat together. If you will sleep, we must sleep together, she often said. Neighbors marveled at the closeness between mother and daughter. To Nina, Kayamika was not just a child. She was her entire world, the only reason she woke up each morning. But far away, somewhere across the state, another little girl, the stolen twin, was living a life of pain. Morning came softly in Nobi village, with the cock's crow echoing from one compound to another. The first rays of the sun broke through the mist that covered the red earth, and women with baskets on their heads hurried toward the stream. Some sang cheerfully as they went, while others walked silently, thinking of the day's burdens. In the compound of Nina, laughter already filled the air. Kayamika, now a bright-eyed girl of 8, ran around with her wrapper tied loosely around her waist. She looked so much like her late father that elders in the village often shook their heads in wonder. Obu Obina ka onaidi, they would say. She looks exactly like Obina. Nina stood by the wooden table, slicing fresh garden eggs and pepper with practiced ease. Her daughter leaned close to her, picking out the ugba, oil bean slices, for the meal. Their closeness was like the bond between salt and soup. You could never separate one from the other. Kayamika, hand me that spoon, Nina said. Here it is, Mama. The girl replied quickly, her face bright with eagerness. When the food was ready, Nina carried the plates into the small parlor. But she did not eat immediately. She called her daughter close, took her hand, and made her sit beside her. You know our rule, Nina whispered, smiling softly. Kayamika laughed. Yes, Mama. We eat together. And so they ate, their spoons moving in rhythm as though their very souls were in agreement. Neighbors sometimes gossiped about it, how the woman refused to eat without her daughter, how they shared everything like twins joined at the heart. But Nina paid no attention. To her, this was the only child she had, her heartbeat, her sunshine in a dark world. But in another part of Anambra, in a village not far from Nobi, another little girl woke up to a different reality. Her name was Amarachi, though her foster family rarely called her by it. To them, she was simply that girl. She was small and frail, her eyes dull from years of hunger, and her back marked with scars from endless beatings. The family that had taken her in did not see her as a child to be loved, but as a servant to be used. She was the one sent to fetch water from the stream before dawn. She was the one forced to hawk roasted corn and groundnuts on the highway while other children went to school. She was the one who received beatings for mistakes she did not even make. Lazy girl, useless child, her foster mother often screamed. Sometimes, Amarachi would stand by the window of their mud house at night, staring at the stars. Tears would slide down her cheeks as she whispered, God, where is my mother? Where is my father? Did they abandon me? Why don't I have anyone who loves me? Her only comfort was her shadow on the ground, the only thing that followed her wherever she went. One year, when both girls were about 12, fate began to draw their paths closer. In Nobi, preparations for the IRIG, New Yam Festival, were in full swing. It was a season of joy, a time when the people thanked the gods of the land for the harvest. Drums echoed in the evenings, masquerades danced through the dusty roads, and the smell of roasted yam filled the air. Kayamika and her mother were at the heart of the celebration. Nina, despite her widowhood, had become respected for her industriousness. She wove baskets, sold palm oil in the market, and made sure her daughter lacked nothing. At the festival, they wore matching Ankara wrappers, their smiles shining like the morning sun. Meanwhile, Amarachi stood at the edge of another village's square, carrying a heavy tray of boiled corn on her head. Children her age danced to the drumbeats, clapping and laughing, but she only watched with envy. Sweat trickled down her forehead as she shifted the tray from one arm to the other. Buy corn, sweet corn, only 10 naira, she called out, her voice weak but determined. Few noticed her, and those who did often scolded her for standing too close to the dancers. She bit her lips to stop the tears. She longed to dance, to laugh, to be free like the other children. But freedom was not hers to enjoy. As the years passed, the contrast between the two sisters grew sharper. Kayamika blossomed like a hibiscus flower. She went to school in the neighboring town, dressed in a neat uniform, and carrying books in her mother's raffia bag. She was intelligent, outspoken, and full of life. Teachers adored her, classmates envied her, and her mother's pride knew no bounds. Mgi. Nina often prayed at night. My God, I thank you. But Amarachi's life was a shadow of suffering. She never saw the four walls of a classroom. Instead, she knew the sting of cane, the bitterness of hunger, and the weight of endless labor. By the time she was 14, her body had grown lean from hardship, and her eyes burned with a quiet anger. She often asked herself questions no one could answer. Why me? Why does the world hate me so much? Why do others have love, and I have none? And then one fateful day, after another merciless beating from her foster mother, because she had broken a clay pot while running to fetch water, Amarachi decided she had had enough. That night, while the household slept, she tied her few belongings in a ragged cloth and slipped out of the compound. Barefoot, hungry, but determined, she walked into the darkness. She did not know where she was going. All she knew was that she could not return. Days later, after wandering through villages, sleeping under trees, and surviving on scraps, Amarachi found herself in Nobi, the very town where her real mother and sister lived. She had no idea of the destiny that awaited her. Her journey had only just begun. The dry season sun blazed over Nobi like a ball of fire. The harmattan winds had begun to sweep through the village, carrying with them fine dust that clung to the skin and left the lips dry and cracked. Women spread their freshly harvested cassava on mats before their compounds, and the air was filled with the smell of roasting palm kernels. Amarachi walked slowly along the narrow village path that led to the marketplace. Her wrapper was faded, and her feet were cracked from long journeys, but her eyes carried a strange light, half weariness, half determination. She had been in Nobi for only a few days, doing odd jobs for food, washing clothes for women, helping in farms, and sleeping in a small abandoned hut near the edge of the village. She did not know why her heart had settled here. Something about this place called to her, like a voice she could not yet hear clearly. That morning, she had gone to the market square to see if she could help offload baskets for traders in exchange for a few tubers of yam. The market was bustling, as usual. Women sat in rows with baskets of tomatoes, okra, and bitter leaf spread before them. Children carried small calabashes filled with groundnut paste, calling out for buyers. The butchers shouted prices, their cutlasses falling heavily on slabs of meat. Drummers sat under the ojirasai tree, their hands beating against leather drums, entertaining the crowd with songs and jokes. Amarachi stood there, taking it all in, when suddenly, her eyes fell on something that made her freeze. Across the market, a girl about her age walked gracefully beside a woman. They were laughing together, carrying baskets filled with garden eggs and peppers. The girl wore a neat gown with small flower prints, her hair well braided in cornrows. Her face shone like the morning sun. Amarachi's breath caught in her throat. The girl looked exactly like her. Her knees grew weak. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was the sun playing tricks on her. But when she looked again, the resemblance was undeniable. The same round face, the same bright eyes, the same dimple that deepened when she smiled. It was like looking into a mirror, but one that reflected a better, happier version of herself. Chi Chinik Moo. Amarachi whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. My God! The basket she had been holding slipped from her hand and fell to the ground, scattering groundnuts across the dust. But she did not even notice. Her eyes were glued to the pair, the elegant woman and her daughter. The girl, Kayamika, laughed as she placed her arm around her mother's waist. The mother, Nina, tilted her head lovingly toward her child, whispering something that made both of them giggle. To Amarachi, it was like watching a scene from a life that should have been hers. Her chest tightened painfully. 100 questions rushed into her mind. Who is this girl? Why does she look exactly like me? Why is she happy, well-fed, and loved, while I have suffered like an outcast all my life? She remembered the nights she had cried herself to sleep in her foster mother's hut, wishing for someone to hold her, to tell her she was special. She remembered the hunger, the beatings, the loneliness. And here was this girl, her exact copy, basking in the love of a mother. Amarachi followed them from a distance, her eyes burning. She trailed them as they bought yam, beans, and dry fish. She watched the way Nina held Kayamika's hand, The way she carried her basket for her when it became too heavy. The way she paused often to smile at her child, as though she were the very air she breathed. It was too much for Amarachi to bear. At a corner, she whispered to herself, "So I have a twin, and I was the one thrown away. I was the one abandoned to suffer." Her heart, already hardened by years of pain, now began to fill with bitterness. For the next few days, Amarachi watched them secretly. She hid behind trees when they walked to the stream. She lingered near the school compound to see Kayamika laughing with her friends. She crouched by the church fence to see them pray together on Sunday mornings, their heads bent side by side. The more she watched, the more the fire of envy consumed her. She noticed the way Nina refused to eat without Kayamika, the way they sang songs together while cooking, the way they wore matching wrappers to weddings and festivals. And every time, Amarachi's heart screamed, "That should have been me." She began to despise Kayamika. In her eyes, her twin sister was not just lucky. She was the thief who had stolen her life. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the air smelled of burning firewood, Amarachi finally gathered courage. She waited near the narrow path that led to the stream, knowing that Kayamika usually went there with her mother to fetch water. That day, however, Kayamika came alone, balancing a clay pot on her head. She hummed a tune as she walked, the song of a carefree child who had never known true suffering. Amarachi stepped out from behind a palm tree. The sound of the humming stopped. Kayamika froze, her eyes widening in shock. It was as if she were looking at her reflection in the stream itself. Who are you?" Kayamika stammered, her clay pot slipping slightly from her head. Amarachi's lips trembled, but she forced a bitter smile. "I should be asking you that." They stood staring at each other, the silence heavy, the resemblance undeniable. Two halves of one whole, finally face to face after years of separation. But instead of joy, Amarachi's heart beat with envy. Instead of laughter, her lips curved in resentment. That night, as she lay on the cold floor of her abandoned hut, Amarachi whispered into the darkness, "I will take her place. Nobody will know. She has lived the life that should have been mine. Now, I will live it, no matter what it costs." Her decision was made. The jealousy that had been growing in her heart had now taken root, and soon it would bear a deadly fruit. The moon that night was pale and thin, like the eye of a dying man. The village lay in silence, save for the occasional cry of a night bird. The harmattan wind whistled through the tall palm trees, rattling their fronds as if the spirits themselves were restless. Amarachi sat in the darkness of her abandoned hut, her knees drawn to her chest. Her mind was a storm. She could no longer eat. She could no longer sleep, and she could no longer bear the sight of Kayamika living the life that should have been hers. "It is not fair," her heart whispered. "Why did fate choose her? Why did fate leave me to suffer?" Every day she followed Kayamika secretly, and every day her bitterness grew. She saw how her twin wore fine clothes while she tied rags. She saw how her mother pampered her while she had never known a mother's touch. She saw love, laughter, and belonging, while all she had known was rejection and pain. That envy finally turned into a decision, a deadly one. "I will kill her," Amarachi muttered, her eyes burning. "I will take her place. Nobody will know. Even the mother will not suspect it. After all, we are one and the same." The next evening, as the sun set behind the thick bamboo trees, Kayamika walked alone to the stream to fetch water. Her mother had stayed behind to roast yam, promising to join her later. The path to the stream was quiet, lined with tall elephant grasses that swayed in the evening breeze. Birds chirped softly as they returned to their nests. Kayamika hummed a soft tune, her clay pot balanced carefully on her head. She did not see Amarachi step out from the shadows. The resemblance was startling. For a moment, even the crickets seemed to pause, as if shocked by the sight of two identical girls facing each other on a lonely path. Kayamika frowned, her brows knitting. "You again? Who are you? Why do you look like me?" Amarachi's lips curled into a bitter smile. "I am you. Or rather, I should have been you." Before Kayamika could respond, Amarachi lunged forward. A heavy stick in her hand came crashing down on Kayamika's head. The clay pot shattered against the ground, water splashing into the dust. Kayamika fell, her cry swallowed by the rustling grasses. She struggled weakly, eyes wide with shock and betrayal. Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice faint. Because you stole my life. Amarachi hissed, tears mixing with her anger. With one final blow, silence claimed the path. Kayamika lay lifeless, her blood seeping into the red earth of Nobi. Amarachi stood over her twin, her chest heaving. The weight of what she had done pressed heavily on her. Yet another voice inside her whispered, "Now you can finally live." She dragged the body deep into the bushes, covering it with leaves. Then she wiped her tears, straightened her wrapper, and walked back toward the village. When Amarachi entered Nina's compound that night, the widow smiled at the sight of her daughter. "Kayamika, where have you been?" "I was worried," Nina said, rushing forward to embrace her. Amarachi stiffened for a moment, then forced a smile and leaned into the hug. I was delayed at the stream, Mama." Nina nodded, not suspecting anything. She held her daughter's face in her palms and kissed her forehead. "Come, let us eat together." Amarachi felt her chest tighten. She had dreamed of this moment, of being held, of being called daughter, of eating with a mother. But she had not imagined it would come at such a price. That night, for the first time in her life, she sat at a table and ate a meal with love surrounding her. Yet as she chewed, the taste of guilt lingered bitterly on her tongue. Days passed. At first, everything seemed normal. The village people still greeted Kayamika warmly, and Nina still treated her with boundless love. But soon, cracks began to show. Kayamika had been a cheerful, gentle girl who loved singing with her mother. Amarachi, on the other hand, was moody and withdrawn. She snapped easily at little things and often refused to laugh at jokes that once delighted her twin. Nina began to notice. One evening, as they sat together to eat, she leaned closer. "My daughter, are you well? You don't smile the way you used to. You don't sing with me anymore." Amarachi forced a smile. "I am fine, Mama. Maybe I am just tired." But Nina's heart was not at rest. A mother's spirit can sense what the eyes cannot see. She began to watch her daughter closely, her suspicion growing quietly like weeds in a garden. One afternoon, as the harmattan dust swirled through the village, an old woman named Mama Agwagu came to Nina's compound. She was known for her sharp eyes and sharp tongue, a woman who missed nothing that happened in the village. She sat on the wooden stool under the mango tree, her walking stick resting beside her. "Nina," she began slowly, "I have kept quiet for too long, but my spirit will not let me rest." Nina frowned, confused. "Mama, what is it?" The old woman's eyes turned toward Amarachi, who sat nearby, pounding palm kernels with trembling hands. "I saw this girl," Mama Agwaga said, her voice heavy, "the night she killed your daughter by the stream." Nina gasped, the pestle dropping from Amarachi's hand. "I was returning from my daughter's compound that evening," the old woman continued. "The moonlight guided me, and I saw everything. I saw her strike your daughter. I saw her drag the body into the bush. I kept quiet because I wanted to be sure. But now, my conscience cannot allow me to watch you live with a murderer." Nina's world spun. She turned to Amarachi, her voice shaking. "Is it true? Tell me it is a lie." Tears streamed down Amarachi's face. She fell to her knees, wailing. "I was jealous, Mama. I suffered all my life while she enjoyed everything. I just wanted to feel loved, to belong. I could not bear watching her live my life. Please forgive me." Her cries pierced the air, but Nina's heart broke into pieces. The news spread quickly, and soon the police were called. Amarachi was taken away, her sobs echoing as she was dragged from the compound. The villagers shook their heads, whispering about the cruelty of jealousy and the wickedness of fate. Kayamika's body was later found in the bushes, already decayed. She was buried properly with the rites of her people, women wailing and men beating drums of sorrow. At the graveside, Nina fell to the ground, tearing her clothes and throwing sand over her head. "Chanique, you have taken both of them from me," she cried. "My two daughters are gone. What am I living for?" From that day, Nina's mind was never the same. She wandered the village, speaking to herself, her wrapper hanging loosely around her shoulders. Sometimes she would sit by the stream, staring into the water, whispering, "Kayamika, Amarachi, where are my children? Why did you leave me?" The villagers pitied her, but they could do nothing. Fate had dealt her a cruel blow, and her heart could not bear it. And so, the story of the twins ended in tragedy. Two daughters born of one womb, torn apart by greed and fate. reunited only in death. The people of Nobi told the tale for years to come, shaking their heads and saying, "Envy is a disease that kills faster than poison. What God has divided, man cannot force together." Nina lived on, but her laughter never returned. She became a shadow in the village, a reminder that sometimes the greatest enemy is not the world outside, but the bitterness that grows within.